Sociologists talk about something called cultural capital. Cultural capital is the total sum of a person's life experience.
Therefore, each person's cultural capital is unique. It's like our fingerprints. No two are the same. But there are common experiences. Storyteller Garrison Keillor capitalizes on these experiences and captures the fears that we've all felt as children and the stressors that we've all experienced as teenagers.
Keillor highlights the idea that fixing a problem may not be as necessary as knowing that an answer can be found. Storm Home by Garrison Keillor. Well, it had been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, my hometown. It certainly was a caution to people to realize that the countryside was not so peaceful as it appeared. And especially was a caution to some of those children who lived out near the homesteaders and go to Sunnyside School.
We were 8 years old, walking half a mile twice a day, in early morning and late afternoon down the road into the woods. And the woods were dark, you know.
It's scary, even when there are older children with you. And especially when there are older children with you. Because it's the older children who like to talk as you were walking down the road. And as a little kid, they would scare you. So you would start to walk a little faster.
I remember them very well. They were the same older children who used to frighten us little kids every winter on the subject of putting your tongue on a pump handle.
Now, I suppose that they're right, that if you put your tongue on a pump handle when it's bitterly cold, the saliva on your tongue would freeze to it and you would be stuck there.
But it wouldn't just be the pump handle. It could be the whole pump or anything metal. It could be rain pipes or whatever, but they kind of focused in on the pump handle as the lethal weapon. And those big kids scared us so much. They said that you have to wait until spring to be free, so they'd come by and put a tent over you. And I mean, of course, we never actually put our tongue on the pump handle. At least, not on purpose. See, the pump would call to us, draw us in, talk to us, and make us stick out our tongue onto the pump. Our last words would always be, "Ah, help!"
Although children aren't the only ones who get frightened and manage to frighten themselves. I will tell you when the town council frightened themselves silly when they met on an emergency plan for Lake Wobegon.
And once you got all those people in that room, they all started talking about the disastrous things that could happen, that nobody was prepared for. And it was like when we were kids and we would play What If.
They talked about tornadoes. They talked about flash floods, about things that had never happened in the whole history of the town, about earthquakes and killer blizzards and gangs of motorcyclists coming and holding them all captive, and terrible disasters causing death and destruction, coming down on everybody.
Well, nobody knew. Nobody could talk. They had scared themselves into silence. The idea of disaster, certain horrible disasters striking when you least expected, unknown disasters suddenly coming down upon you, just like our old fear of pump handles.
Then, when I was older and I went to Lake Wobegon High School, Mr. Hedman was the principal there, and he was already thinking ahead to winter and the blizzards that we had every year.
And on the first day of school, each of us children who rode the bus in from the countryside was handed a little slip of paper that said, "Your storm home is," and then we were assigned to someone's house in town. This is where we would go if we had a blizzard during the school day, and we would spend the night there.
Mine was the Krugers. My storm home was the Krugers.
An old couple back then who lived in a little green cottage down by the lake. And I can see it now because I walked past it so many times looking at my storm home over the years.
It was that kind of house that if you were a child and you were lost in a dark forest and you came across it in a clearing, you would know that there was a kindly old couple living there who would take you in and rescue you, and that you were a lucky child who had gotten into a story with a happy ending.
And I hadn't just been assigned to the Krugers. I imagined that they'd come down to the school and that they picked me out of the crowd and that they had said,
Him! We want him! We want the skinny kid over there with the thick leg. We want him, in case of a blizzard, to stay with us.
and I often dreamt about going and knocking on their door, and she would open it up and she would say,
Huh, it's you. I knew you would come someday. I'm glad to see you. Won't you come in and get out of those wet clothes? Come on into the kitchen, sit down. I will make you some hot chocolate. Would you like an oatmeal cookie or something?
and then she would say,
Carl, come down here and see what's in the kitchen.
he would say, is it our storm child? And she would say,
Yes, he's sitting here, in the flesh, big as life.
then we would play cards and go off to bed.
I never did go there. We didn't have any blizzards that came during the day, that year, or the year after that.
They were all convenient blizzards. Evening blizzards and weekend blizzards.
But they became a big part of my imagination. And I always thought that I could go to the Krugers. And I guess I didn't. Because all of my troubles were bearable troubles. And I'm certain that they were more bearable for imagining that the Krugers were there, my storm home.
Whenever things go bad, I think, well, there's always the Krugers. Now, I suppose that's kind of fiction, isn't it? Our storm homes. Because after all, we never did go to our storm homes. So they became like fiction to us.
Mr. Hedman might as well have written on that slip instead of saying,
Your storm home is the Krugers.
for all the difference it made, he might as well have written, Your storm home is a puddle beyond the march with Dr. Doolittle.
Your storm home is Mr. Zuckerman's farm with Charlotte and Wilbur the pig.
Your storm home is a raft on the Mississippi River.
And when it comes down to fiction, if it comes down to a clear choice,
I think I'd rather imagine going to the Krugers than imagine putting my tongue on a pump handle.